Hi everyone, welcome back. Long time no see. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you guys about variables and conducting operations, arithmetic operations in Python. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to tell you the brief video sequence that I'm planning to do. So the first thing I'm going to teach you guys is basic operations and defining variables. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to do some arithmetic problems in the second video. In the third video, I'm going to teach you guys how to write functions in Python. Then in the fourth video, we're going to learn how to take a problem statement and convert it into a function using the operations that we learned. And then the final video, I'm going to create a video about writing and tracing recursive code. So now that we've gone over the video sequence, let's get into the video. So in this video, we're going to be going over basic operations in Python. So the operations we're going to go over are addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. We are also going to go over modulus operator and the floor division operator. So now that we know what we're going over, let's create some variables. So I'm going to create global variables since I'm not creating it in a function or in a class. It's going to be a global variable. So let's write the definition down. Global variables are variables that can be accessed throughout the code and let's go over the supposed opposite of it, which is a local variable. So basically, a local variable is a variable that can only be accessed through one block of code. So now let's get into defining our global variables. Let's declare our variable I to be 10, then our variable j to be 30, and actually, yeah, j to be 30, k to be 5, and L to be 2. And then we'll also define one more extra variable, M, and that's going to be, let's see, we'll make it 7. So one more thing that I'd like to go over before we get started on the code. The Python naming convention for variables is that it can only contain digits or numbers from 0 to 9, and it can only contain letters, uppercase or lowercase. And it's also important to note that case matters. So say you have an example of the variable u is equal to 20 and capital U is equal to 90. And you print both of them. For one output, you're going to get u is 20, and for another, you're going to get u is 90. So make sure you check your case. And you can also add underscores to separate words. So then what you're going to do is usually the naming convention is lowercase letter or words separated, words slash numbers, my bad, separated with underscores. So now that we know how to name our variables, let's get into the basic operations. The first operation we're going to go over is addition. So the operator for addition is a plus symbol, as many of you may know. So it's just like in normal arithmetic. It's a plus symbol. So say we want to add two numbers. We'll have, say, I and j. We want to add them. So we can do this one of two ways. And this goes for all the types of new operators, right? So the method one is to create a separate variable to store the value of the sum. So that was a lot of words. Let's put it into action. We can say P is equal to I plus J. And then to display it in the console, what goes on behind the scenes is that the value of I plus J is assigned P. So when we calculate that, what's 10 plus 30? That's equal to 40. Which is assigned to P. So we know that P is 40, but it's not going to be printed. So, or we can't see it. So let's try running the code to see what you mean. Notice how even when we run it, there is no output in the console. So what we're going to do is to make it visible, we're going to write print. So this is the function to display an output or into the console log. So we're going to write print p and run the code. So notice how we get 40. That's our result. So our second method could have just been print is just print I plus j, because Python can solve the value inside and then give it. And it's not going to print I plus j simply because you don't have quotation marks around it. Quotation marks makes you print what the total or the string value inside. When you put quotes around a value, it's going to make it into a string. So it's going to print I plus j. But because you're putting variables, it's going to print out the value. Notice we have 40 and 40. So this is why, how this works. So for easier purposes, I'm going to use method number 2 for the remainder of this video. But you can just as well use the method 1. It just takes up more lines of code. So then subtraction. The operator is minus. So let's say we want to subtract k and l. So what we're going to do is we're going to write print k minus l. So what that does is it's subtracting from the value of k, l. So how that's going to look like is it's going to be 5 minus 2, which is equal to 3, which is the output we should be expecting. So let's run the code, and there we have it. We have our value 3. Now let's move on to multiplication. So the operator for that, it gets kind of weird here, is an asterisk. So you can click Shift 8 on your keyboard to produce an asterisk, and that will produce your multiplication symbol. So say we want to multiply two numbers. I want to multiply k and l, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print k asterisk l. That's going to produce our value of 5 times 2. So let's try and see what that is. 5 times 2, which is equal to 10. So this is what we should be expecting, right? So let's print it. And there we go. We have 10. So I'm going to teach you a little bit of an advanced operator. It's not necessarily something that's a basic arithmetic operator, but we're going to go over the double equal. So that's going to be equal equal. And what this operator does is it checks for equality, right? Fancy term, really all it means is it checks if two values are equal. It should never be confused with single equal, which what it does is it assigns a value. So notice how here in this example, we assigned the value of I plus j to p. So p became 40. That's what the single operator does. But the double operator checks for equality. So let's see an example of that. Instead of making print k times L, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable. Say, actually we use that. Q is equal to k times L. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write a really small if statement. We're going to say if k times L, or sorry, my bad, Q is equal to, say we want to check equality for I, return true. So what this does is it's going to give you, in the console log, it's going to print true. Else, return false. Okay, so notice how it's giving me an error. This is because I didn't write a function. The return function then can only be used with a function. So let me just write a quick function. So this is an introduction into the next video. So let's say we have def check underscore equality. And we're going to determine a variable q. Now for this one, if we refer back to our notes, we notice that local variable is a variable that can only be accessed through the block of code. And since we want q to be equal to k times L, we're going to click Control C or Control X, paste it here. And oh, I forgot my colon. Make sure you put your colon at the end. And let's change our input to k comma L, right? So this is what our function is going to look like. Okay, so notice how another important thing is indentation. Python is a highly indented language, so you need to make sure your indents are correct. It has to match some level of indentation. So let me just rewrite this code because for some reason it's not working. Okay, so Q is equal to K times L. And let's write if Q is equal to the global variable I, which we determined up here, return true. Else, return false. Actually, what we can do is, since these two variables are actually global variables, we determined them up here, we don't need to put arguments in this. So what we can do is we can determine a variable inside this function. So q, the value will be assigned in the function and it will be checked. So now let me tell you, check, let's call the function check underscore equality. So basically what I'm doing here is making it print the value that the function returns so that we can see what goes on. So what's going to happen here is the variable q is going to be assigned. Remember, assigned, not checks equality, but assigned the value of k times L. Then here, it's going to check whether the value q is equal to the value of global variable I. Then it's going to return the value and you're going to print the value to make sure. So now let's run the function and see what's printed. Very interesting. Why isn't it printing? Okay, so I just realized my mistake here. It's not, the code here is being unreached. So it's not, the code isn't reaching there, or the console, when it's running through everything, it's not touching it. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the return to print and just print the true and print the false, just so that we know what's going on, right? So that when we run the code, we're going to get printed true, because we know that k times L is equal to 10 and I is also equal to 10. So it's going to print true. Okay, so back to the remainder of the video. Let's look for our final operation, which is division, right? The operator for this is a forward slash, right? So just like anything else, what we're going to do is we're going to divide two numbers. So I'm going to divide j by I. So, and I want to see the result. So print j divided by L. So what this is doing essentially is it's taking the value of j, which is 30, and dividing it by the value of L. Sorry, my bad. I meant I, not j. Dividing it by the value of 30, which is 10, which is equal to 3. This is the value we're expecting. So let's see what runs in the console. See how it's printing 3.0? Division usually returns a 0.0 value if there's no remainder. And it also does it as a measure of security, just in case you get a decimal value, right? So this is what division works. So in this video, let's just go over the brief things that we went about. We went over the four basic operations, their operators. We got over global and local variables. Then what we did was we went over a brief naming convention. Note that case matters. Then what we did was we went over addition, which is the plus operator, subtraction, which is the minus operator, multiplication, which is the asterisk operator, and finally division, which is the forward slash operator. And don't forget, we just had a brief introduction to functions and the equal, single equal, and double equal operator. We'll get more into detail with all of these materials as we're progressing through the video series. The next video series is going to be about these two functions, modulus and floor division operators. So we'll talk about that in the next video. And also, it's great to be back. See you soon. Bye.